Hey folks, today we're covering Dev Diary 179 for Crusader Kings 3, and this one's called A Little Bit of Everything. This is covering all under heaven, and they're going to talk about some new features they've thought of, and then also some improvements they've made. So most of this is going to cover the China side of this content, improvements they've made to the Celestial Government type, and then some other changes they've made as well. But they're also going to talk about border warfare, which is a really cool addition, which they had previously mentioned about 6 weeks ago in one of the previous Dev Diaries, but they have now added that to this DLC, or I guess it might be in the free patch. We'll see once it gets announced. But they are going to talk about that, and then also some cool new mechanics for Southeast Asia as well. So we're going to cover all that in the Dev Diary. Do hit that like button if you enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But let's just get into the content today. So the first thing they're going to talk about is Treasury budgeting and how that is going to work in the upcoming DLC for the Celestial Government type. And this was covered in a previous Dev Diary, the mechanics of China, and you can go back and watch that video or read that Dev Diary if you want to catch up on how that system works. This is like an additional change they've made on top of it that they didn't announce previously. So a key thing they wanted to improve is how the treasury flows from parts of the empire that don't have their own tax income, such as ministries, and how that is calculated. So as they say, the ministry would receive money from the emperor in treasury, but they couldn't really set this as an absolute number. Like they get 10 treasury per month. That doesn't scale. At the beginning, it would be a lot of money. At the end of the game, it would be nothing. 10 gold a month at the end of the game is nothing compared to early in the game. So what they've done is provided a more scalable number instead of a fixed modifier number. They've implemented a new set of laws that allows you to change this, and you can see that on the screen now. So change treasury budgets. You can see a breakdown here, the new treasury calculation, salary budget, ministry budget, and military budget, how many people will receive them, the allocation they get, like the percentage of your total funds you're sending out, how much that will give them, their base rate, how much they should get without any modifiers. They're going to talk about this in a second. And then also the trend that they've had, like how much this is changing versus what they have at the moment. You can see on the right-hand side, the last budget enacted and what was there. And then obviously you could change it on that left-hand side. You can see the total you are giving out, but then also the unallocated amount. You can keep some for yourself and then kind of pocket that money as well. So they've added 3 categories for the centralized treasury budget. We saw that just now. Salary budget, treasury, which goes to all vassals and sub-vassals that should receive a salary. It is given as gold income. Ministry budget, each of the ministries will receive a slice of the budget as treasury income. And then military budget, each of the holders of a military province type will get a slice of this budget as treasury income, in addition to their normal treasury income as well. This was talked about in that previous Dev Diary. If you set your border provinces as like military province types, they get additional money because they're fighting off raiders and fighting off other armies and things like that. And then, as I said, the unallocated budget will become income for the general treasury and can be spent by the emperor in any way they please. One cool thing they've done is they've added it so you can run a deficit if you desire to, but it will be drawn from your collected treasury. Running a deficit could prove potent, however, if you want to keep your government happy and powerful. I guess if you've got a stockpile of treasury, you could run a deficit, make people very happy, give them some more treasury and income. They can do other things with that, and then you can kind of eat that cost for a while. Do be careful though, because being in a treasury debt will impact you similarly to how gold debt affects your character. So I guess you get a bunch of modifiers if you have no money at all. That does make sense. So I guess then you might want to lower the allocation that you are giving out so you can start building up a bit of a stockpile again. Build up some funds, or, just keep it balanced all the time, and then it won't really affect you. You can see that in the next screenshot. You can see the current deficit in this example. They are going to run out of money ultimately, but you are keeping them happier. That's going to prevent them getting up to some shenanigans if you have these issues of not giving them the money they think they should get. I think this is a cool system. It gives some additional gameplay to this area. Previously, I guess it was just a static number and you couldn't really change it, whereas now you can mess around with the numbers, balance it, play the bookkeeper, figure out what you want to do, and then kind of play around that depending on what you're doing. Again, if you're running a deficit, maybe you can get money from elsewhere, and then that's going to negate the fact that you're giving out extra money that you don't get from your own income. But let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. I like this change. Again, some additional gameplay for us. And then next, they're going to talk about calculating budget base rates. Definitely stuff we all want to be reading about on a Tuesday morning. So budget base rate, the amount a standard recipient of the budget category receives. Recipients may receive more or less than the base rate, depending on their rank, their merit rank, or other modifiers as well, such as, you just sending them less money, so they're getting less money out of this if you do choose to do that. And then next, they're going to show us an example of this, like how it actually looks in game. So you can see the subject salary, the salary budget, the base rate 0.7. They do mention The base rate is like the averaged out, like the normalized version that all the people who receive this should kind of get before modifiers. And then the modifiers below it, Kingdom tier circuit, plus 100% of that. So I guess it would be 1.4. And then for their merit rank, they're currently 5th rank, which gives them a 20% boost to this as well. And then they are actually going to give us an example here. But you can see the calculation example. Say you have a budget category that would get 100 treasury allocated to it, and it has 8 people who would receive it, of which 6 have the base rate of 100%, and 2 people have a base rate of 150, and then they do the maths there. Each of the normal recipients would get 11.1 treasury per month, and the 2 higher rate people would receive 16.6. Basically, you have that base rate, what everyone should get, and then the modifiers just stacked on top of it, as they've discussed here. It's not too hard to follow, but for someone like me, it does get a little bit confusing with all these different things. But basically, as they said here, the base rate plus modifiers afterwards. And then as they've shown, you can edit that in the budget, send less money, so they will get less of that money. So as that example was 100 treasury allocated to it, obviously if you cut that down to 50, everyone there will get half of what they should get. Next, they're going to talk about enacting a treasury budget, so all this kind of related to everything else. Now, if the base rate is calculated continuously, your treasury budget would always need to be perfectly balanced, as all things should be, but that is not how budget setting usually works in the real world and is kind of boring, so they want to spice it up a little bit. So instead, budgets get enacted and set the base rate to a fixed number until the next budget is enacted in the future. Is the base rate significantly less than the previous budget? People will get angry and you will receive an opinion modifier. If they get more, they will be happy and they'll get a plus opinion modifier as well. So really saying here, it doesn't change like every month depending on the money coming in and out. Every time you set one of these budgets, you fix that number. And then I guess if it falls very far behind what they should be getting, that's when you're going to have to do a new budget and really catch you back up again, or just leave it and pocket the money for yourselves, I suppose. Lower and higher levels of budget allocation for each category will also provide additional effects. For example, setting your salary budget very low might encourage some local corruption, so you don't want to be doing that. How frequently you can and should enact a budget is something they're still balancing, so they haven't talked about this. Maybe you do it every year, maybe you do it every 5 years. I can't imagine it'll be more than once a year. That would get a little bit tedious, I think. Maybe you do it like every 2 or 3 years, and then you can maybe force it earlier. I would think like a similar rotation as maybe like court events and things like that happen. I don't want this to be all the time, because a lot of the time you're probably going to go in and just press, yeah, whatever, just do the default. People will be happy, but I guess you do want to go in there and do like a special budget and change it maybe. And they do give an example of that here. So for example, if you're expanding your realm, you have more vassals without a corresponding increase in tax income. You might have to give more allocation to salaries to keep everyone on the same level, but that comes out of someone else's slice. If you annoy the military governors or the ministers, tough choice. Maybe running a small deficit for a while can't hurt your realm. So again, yeah, if you're expanding very quickly, you are going to have all these extra mouths to feed, but if you haven't edited the budget, that is going to cause you problems, so you're going to have to decide how often you want to do that. And then the last thing they want to talk about around treasuries is manipulating the treasury budget as a vassal. In Imperial China, many would have come with suggestions to the emperor on how the budget should be distributed. Political movements can push their agenda, and a wise emperor should heed their advice. Of course, you can increase the relative budget of your own ministry, circuit, or salary by manipulating your vassal contracts. So very similar to like feudal. You can go to the emperor, I've got a hook on you, I think you should pay me more than everyone else, and I guess he'll have to do it if you have that hook on him. It does sound like something along those lines is going to be available to you. The next thing they're going to cover is the dynastic cycle. This was covered a lot in a previous dev diary. So again, they're just showing some changes they've made here. And the first thing they're going to talk about is Emperor playing favors. So as a player, you will have access to 2 decisions that will allow you to signal what era and what movement you favor. Being in a favored movement has an impact on the catalysts and increases the effectiveness of influencing others through schemes or interactions. Similarly, the favored era also triggers catalysts, whilst also affecting the pro-dynasty movement's members' behaviors. That's a long stretch of words, and which era will be established when getting out of unstable eras. So really saying, I think, that if you're the emperor, you can kind of favor a particular movement. They covered this in a previous dev diary. Again, I won't go through it all here. It was quite a long dev diary previously. But if you do favor one of these, it looks like they get bonuses, so things they want are more likely to happen. So this is a way as the emperor to maybe steer the empire in a certain way, at least a little bit, depending on what you're trying to do. And then they do say the AI will not use these decisions because the AI emperor is more malleable and will follow the most powerful movement's wishes. They do go on to say, though, only if the pro-dynasty movement is in power does the emperor choose based on their personality. So I guess that goes against what they just said. and they can actually change it. So civilian or economy focused characters will choose advancement, whilst military rulers will choose expansion. For the favored movement, the AI Emperor decides based on the debate activity outcomes. More about them and player impact on these decisions later on in the dev diary. They're going to get to that very quickly. But you can see this here, favor an era, you can favor advancement or expansion, and then you can also favor a movement. So the advancement movement, conservative movement, pro-song movement, and you can choose one of these, and as you can see, it does give you some bonuses towards those. This would boost their power by 350 if the Emperor looked down and said, you know what, you guys have got the best ideas. It kind of makes people think like, oh, they have got the best ideas. So they do get some more power towards that system as well. And then a small change they've made here is they've changed the names of some of the eras here, so it's a little bit less confusing. I will say, yeah, previously the eras and the cycles kind of had similar names in some regards, and they have changed that. So you can see it here. During stable, you can have advancement or expansion. During unstable, you can have tension or conquest. And then under chaotic, there's just the one option, and that is division. So really just separating the names a little bit more so it isn't too confusing. The names don't overlap as much as they kind of did previously. The next thing we're going to talk about is elders and disciples. The elder-disciple relationship is an integral part of climbing the career ladder in China, and since merit is a currency only used in governments with domiciles, an overview tab has been added to the estates. You'll see that in a second in a screenshot they're going to show us. There you can manage your disciples and your elder. If the elder has other disciples beside you, you can see them in this list as well. In order to kickstart it, the game will assign the relationships a game start randomly based on merit and being in the same movement or just realm proximity. In the next step, they've also added a few shorthand interactions so you can more easily break your relationship and establish new ones within the system. If you don't like this starting setup or you're still under the limit, you can change them, and you'll see that again in the screenshot in a second. As part of these changes, they have also added a limit on how many people you can mentor at once. So previously, these elders could just have unlimited disciples and really could farm currency out of them, I guess, and kind of influence and things like that. They have limited that now, and you can upgrade that by building up your domicile. Building up your buildings will allow more people to come and follow your elders, and you can see that in this screenshot. You can see the elders and disciples. The disciple limit, you can see at the moment that it's +5 and then +1 for scholars study, which is one of the buildings you can build, and then you can see below that your disciples and how many people are here and how many people are following it. It does like you can kick them out though if you want to and just say get out of here. Maybe you're changing your movement to a different type and then you want to get rid of the people that follow that type and bring in people that follow the new movement that you are trying to follow and make more powerful and all that kind of stuff. You can see a lot of this covers the admin government type from the Byzantines, but with this Chinese spin on it that they have covered previously in previous dev diaries. You can see this once again here, the elders and disciple. If you don't have an elder, you can find one. They'll come in and then they'll get disciples who follow them. And then also moving to a new movement, you can do that as well. You can see here, asked to join new movement, you'll gain some merit and then you can go join this dude. And you can see he will get some more personal movement power that will help him in whatever he's trying to get up to as well. And you can see all these different ways you can do this. You can offer your prestige, you can offer your influence as well if you want to. Kind of similar to how you can bribe people to join schemes and things like that. Really kind of using the same system here. And you can say, hey, join this other movement and see how that works out for you. The next thing they're going to cover is living the bureaucratic dream, something we all want to do, obviously, in Crusader Kings 3. So the career path in China wouldn't be complete without an ultimate goal. You would like to become the new dynasty on the heavenly seat. So this is talking about how to take over as the head dynasty without going through the dynastic cycle, going through the breakup of the empire, fighting out those wars, and then re-establishing it under a new dynasty. It looks like there's going to be another way to do this. So they've turned to an existing mechanic to represent this, and this is using like the vizier or the regency system. So creating a new variant of the prime ministry diarchy and calling it the Grand Secretariat. The regent is called a Secretary Direct and will be responsible for the administrative work of the Son of Heaven, keeping the ministers busy through the new mandates. The Scales of Power will provide them with a way to stage a coup, just the same as viziers can in the game. What is unique about this type of regency is that it is tied to the Grand Chancellor Minister by a new realm law, available only for celestial governments. The law makes it flexible and allows it to be changed to follow other ministers instead, and you can see that here, power sharing power in the Grand Secretariat. And if you've had a regency, if you've had a vizier, you've seen this UI, and this is a version of it just for China, your regency and how that can play out for you. And again, very similar to the ones we have now. You can swing the scales of power, different ways you can do that if you have a lot of prestige. You can also leverage your personal movement power as well. So you can give up some of your power within the system to implement a swing in the regency scales if you do want to. And then I guess through this, you can ultimately take over and do this instead of the dynastic cycle way. I think that's what it means anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but reading through it a few times, it sounds like this is an alternate way to take over from the Emperor without doing all the other work towards doing it, if you were able to get it to this point. And then the next thing they're going to talk about is border warfare. This is something they hinted towards in a previous dev diary, and it looks like they are going to implement it. Previously, they said they were testing it, and it looks like they have done that enough. They think it works, and they're going to implement it into the game. So this doesn't just affect China, this does affect other areas as well. So imagine two scenarios. A conqueror is rampaging nearby and grabbing lands that you have claims on, so you are left with three options: murder them, fight head on, or roll over and die. I mean, they are pretty much the three options against conquerors. I guess you can ally with them, and then they won't attack you. So I guess that is rolling over and dying, I guess, in some ways. And then the second option you've got is you restored Rome once again and chose not to do the hard option once again. Now you are out of challenges and can either get to tediously conquering the world, which I guess is a little bit of a dig at their own game. Like, are they saying here, like, the game gets very boring once you get to a certain size in the game? I think that is kind of what they're saying. But anyway, let's leave that to one side. Or, of course, like many of you, you could start your next game where you're also going to try Refound Rome and bring back the Roman Empire to its previous glory. Because ultimately, that is what some of you do in most of your campaigns in Crusader Kings 3. It is a Rome rebuilding simulator. It isn't a role-playing game hidden as a map painter. And under these two scenarios, they wanted to make some changes so it isn't as boring for people that are affected by them. So they wanted to do it so that the world felt a little bit more living and a powerful realm isn't just causing problems for everyone else. So they're going to introduce this new law called the Border Policy Realm Law, which is going to simulate when the top liege is busy with courtly matters in the capital and isn't paying attention to insignificant wars on the edge of his empire. This allows characters to declare war on vassals of a liege and forbids that liege from interfering in that war for 3 years. This will make larger realms less safe and stable, so keeping peripheral weak vassals will be dangerous for you because then other realms can come and attack them, take them, and if they do that within 3 years, you've had no way to help that. Or obviously, if you're attacking, you could attack China, grab a duchy off them, and again, the Emperor of China hasn't had time to help one of his vassals and fight you off as well. And then obviously around this, there are some rules about when this will happen, and they're going to show these off now. So the law is toggled automatically based on set triggers, and you have to have at least one of these for this to happen. So the first one is top liege is hegemony tier, so that is China, Rome, and we also know India is getting a version of the hegemony tier as well. And then in the future, I would imagine maybe the HRE becomes a hegemony tier title in a future game update. We'll worry about that next year, though. Your realm size is larger than 160. For context, this means the HRE is the only other realm besides China that starts the game in 1066 with this law enacted. The top liege's house unity is antagonistic, and the top liege is in a civil war. So if any of these happen, you are then able to do these special border wars, and the liege isn't going to help the people you're attacking. Or obviously, if you're getting attacked, the same thing happens. How many of us are playing games and we're like, do you know what? I'm going to join this empire so I have some protection. I can work my way up inside them. I could get independence. I could take his throne, but I don't want to get attacked by that other empire. Well, in this case, that might happen because you can have these wars now where your liege isn't able to help you for 3 years. Let me know what you think about this. I think this has the potential to be really interesting in how it changes the game. Now, as they said, it doesn't affect everyone. In fact, it's very limited as to who it does affect. But I think this does make sense for like breaking up these larger empires as they get bigger and bigger. It does kind of make sense as well. You know, the Emperor would be busy doing something else. Does he really care about one county being attacked and getting taken out of his realm? He probably does care, but he's probably got other things to worry about. And I do like how that is kind of called out here as well. If the top liege is in a civil war, he's going to be busy fighting that civil war, so you can run in, grab a bit of land off him, and then before he knows it, you've taken that and he has no defense against it. So anyway, let me know what you think about this. I think this could be a cool change. They do show that option here: change border wars policy, guaranteed protection, which is what's going to be active for most realms, or conditional join. And you can see the rules here, that 3-year limit, all those kind of things, and how this will affect those wars if you are involved with them. I think this is a cool change. Again, we'll see how it plays out. And you can see this again in the declare war screen here. So the Duke here is attacking the HRE for his claims in Bohemia. You'll gain the contested title if you're victorious. Due to the border wars policy being conditional join, any liege may join the war after 3 years using the protect vassal interaction. You don't automatically get drawn into it. It looks like an interaction happens after 3 years and you say, yep, I'll join the war. Or I guess if it's going well or you don't care, you could just say, nah, do you know what? I'm busy doing something else. deal with it yourself. The next thing they're going to talk about is debates and examination updates. So they've made some changes here based on the feedback we've given to previous dev diaries about how this worked. And that is, again, this debate system where you go in, have a discussion, try sway people to certain things. You can see that on the screen now. The expansion movement leadership, logic and reason will win the day, or your lack of leadership will bring ruin. This is all about taking over the leadership of this movement. So debates allow you, a member of a movement in the dynastic cycle, to either seize the leadership of the movement or duke it out scholar style with another member to become the dynastic cycle's favored movement. Again, this was all covered in a previous dev diary, so we won't go over exactly how this works. The events in this activity are all about the interplay between different movements, as well as gaining disciples or an elder to support you in your meritorious journey. And you can see here again, entrance gather, succeed at all cost grandson, or do not put the house to shame through your interactions. Speaking of merit, which they've covered previously, the examinations are your be-all and end-all for accumulating this resource. This is most true for landless administrators. With the latest rework to this activity, however, you can now attend an exam whilst landed, for the purpose of helping your family and your disciples to take their exams. The different exam levels have been further fleshed out, with the provincial examination now being its own activity as well. This is available to host for all governments that utilize merit. The naming convention has been changed to civil service examinations, which is how they will be referenced in the future through all dev diaries and when we actually play the game. So nothing too crazy here changing from the initial look that we got on these, but just some slight modifications here, allowing more people to take them and them to be another resource of merit gathering for those people. So I guess they probably got feedback saying for landed people, it was a little bit hard to pick up merit elsewhere and you wanted to help other people in your house or your movement. And this is how they're going to kind of correct that as well. The next thing they're going to cover is clothing and headgear for Southeast Asia. I think this is probably because in the original screenshots, when they were going through this area originally, like 6 to 8 weeks ago, the screenshots they had didn't have specific clothing for this region. And they're really just pointing out here, they have done it. They've gone through a bunch of cultures in this area and picked out some features they wanted to show in game. You can see that here with this amazing crown. I mean, look at this. The roughness, the base color, and then how it looks actually in game now. I mean, this looks fantastic. I can't wait to see this on my ruler. It's going to look really cool. And really saying in this section, they've got a lot of new clothing, crowns, and things like that for Southeast Asia, and we will see those in the future. The last thing they want to talk about in this section is ethnicities and general improvements in this gameplay. So on top of other improvements to Southeast ethnicities and the addition of Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, they're also including new ethnicities for mainland Southeast Asia as well as the islands. Some work has been done on this, but they don't want to show it off just yet. So we're going to get even more kind of fine-tuning to this in the future, and that's always good to see. Always good to see these different cultures and ethnicities, as they said, shown off in game. Maybe you're from that area. Maybe you're just very interested in this area, and being able to play that out yourself is just great to see. Really cool addition here by the game team. And then the last thing they're going to talk about, this is very surprising. I don't think any of you would have had this on your bingo cards, and that is bartering. So they've added this new system to the Wanao government type, which is what you have in Southeast Asia, and that is this bartering system. They do say here, before you all get ahead of yourselves, this isn't a trading system. That's coming next year, obviously. Rather, this is a unique mechanic that they've made available to Wanao characters to reflect the historical merchants of this region. Everything you see after this is work in progress, so don't worry about it too much. This, if you want a very brief overview now, is kind of like raiding, but you don't actually raid, you trade things for gold. It's kind of cool how it looks like it's going to play out. You can see it on the screen now, though, in this screenshot, this new currency you have, and then you can trade this for loot, basically, and then you bring that back to your realm. And you can see as part of that screenshot, there is an army. Well, how is that going to work? So when our characters will be able to raise a bartering army that can go barter with other characters on the map. When arriving in a barony that has loot, bartering armies will exchange their bartering goods for the barony's loot. So instead of looting it directly, you basically trade it for these bartering goods. And then I guess if somebody comes in to raid it, they won't be able to, because I guess you've kind of taken all the loot from it through this trading system. It sounds like that will be the case. So the barony then gets a nice timed modifier, reducing its loot to 0, but increasing things such as development. So again, this is really cool. Instead of getting raided and just losing loot, you lose your loot in that area in a way, but you get positive modifiers for it instead. So again, more development because of all this trading. It does say there's other ones as well. I wonder if you get like little culture modifiers if it's a different culture doing it with you and things like that. So it will be cool to find out more information about this. Upon returning home, the bartering army will exchange their loot for gold, very similar to how raiding happens. And you can see that on the screen now. You bartered with this ruler, you gained 8 loot to your army, and this holding will get the recently bartered modifier for 5 years, so very similar to being looted in many ways. And you can see another example of this. They're in the bartering mission. They're not sieging this place down, guys. It's totally different to that. You fill up this bar, as you can see, and then when that finishes, you exchange the barter goods for loot, and then you move on to somewhere else. Again, totally different to looting. And then you can see here, loot delivered. Wait, no, I just said it was totally different to loot. Anyway, you return home and you gain 58 loot from doing this. I actually really like this. This is a cool kind of version of raiding, but an alternate way to interact with them and bring some kind of trading into the game. Again, as they said, it's not direct trading. It isn't that. Maybe we will get that next year, but this is a way for them to bring in this trading mechanic and have it play out very similar to raiding, but I think it does kind of make sense in the gameplay, like how this works. You have this traveling like market army, this bartering army that moves around doing all this trading. I do think maybe they should change the name of the army, but I guess it makes sense because as they're traveling around, I guess if you're raiding or something, you can go in and attack these armies and steal all the kind of trade goods they've got and all the gold that they've got. I wonder if it converts like the two things. So if they have like 50 of the barter goods and 50 gold, do you just get 50 gold if you defeat them? Or do you get like a version of this? So maybe like 75 gold. So like half the bartering goods becomes gold and then you have the gold they already had. If that all makes sense anyway. I'm probably talking in circles here a little bit, as I always do. But anyway, let me know what you think about this. I do think it's cool though that you can attack them, or I presume you can attack them and then steal that stuff as well. That would be pretty fun to do. They do say this is the primary way for Wanua characters to earn gold. Most of their buildings, vassals and tributaries will not provide gold in-game, but rather these barter goods. Men-at-arms will cost gold to recruit, but they will cost barter goods to maintain. So you buy them with gold, and then these barter goods are like how they're kept going, how you maintain them and make sure they're powerful. And you can see here, monthly barter goods, domain +4, vassals 0.3, and then your expenses, unraised men-at-arms, and their total cost as well. And then you can see an example of these men-at-arms, bowmen here in this one, and they're going to cost you that unraised maintenance, full maintenance, but these do cost gold to actually hire in the first place. So they don't show that off, but they did just describe that now. So raiders are hostile to bartering armies outside the ladder's home realm and can engage them in combat to seize their loot. And you can see that in this screenshot, the barter mission, and it does look like an army. I do think it would be interesting if they added some kind of modifier to the army here so you could see it more easily on the screen if they were these barter armies versus like normal raiding armies. I wonder if the unit model looks a little bit different, or if they add something to the UI so you can see this more easily. I guess it doesn't really matter ultimately, but it would be nice if it had a different model. Maybe they had a cart behind them, something like that with some goods in it, so you could kind of see, oh, this is a trading mission and not an army that's going to attack us, at least not initially anyway. So this whole system is unlocked by a new government rule, which can be added to any government should modders wish. So your favorite mod like Game of Thrones or something like that can implement this in any government type. And then they also say there's a bunch of other new kind of script and mod support for how this works, what you can loot, all those kind of things. So again, your favorite mod might implement this in the future. And then the last thing they're going to talk about in this dev diary is the administrative window updates and really some changes they've made. Obviously, the admin government type is kind of the basis for China and Japan and some other regions. So they've made overall improvements to this and how it looks. And this will obviously also impact the Byzantine government and how that looks as well. So they've displayed all the titles in the realm in this UI now and what actions you can take in the sub window if you choose to do so. So everything's a little bit more compact in one set of windows really, rather than having to dig into other windows to do similar things as well. They've also reduced the size of the coat of arms to make space for additional details. And they've added a couple of shortcut buttons, such as being able to change your vassal directive, which is fantastic. Hopefully this comes to feudal realms as well. Well, actually any realms that have feudal directives. If you can see that here as well, that would be amazing. So it's kind of annoying to find somebody and then go into the interaction and do that change there. As you could see in that previous screenshot, you now can do that in the UI for your vassals, which is great. And then on top of this, opening a title's details will now let you control its thematic army directly, which was previously only available through the military view. So again, getting rid of some of those steps between doing different things. As you could see in that previous screenshot, summon to war, bring their army into yours and use that in your warfare. And that is a little bit easier to do now as well. And then on top of this, the noble families tab has had a little bit of an improvement as well. You can see the change in this next screenshot. Controls 4.5% of the counties in the realm So it's now going to show you how much land these different houses have. This would be important for like how powerful they are, how much they have. If they're going to rebel against you, at a glance, you can see this UI now, how big they are and how much you want to kind of deal with them and how much you want to favor them potentially to make sure they stay on your side. On top of this, they've also added a Your Family tab. This will be in the Windows primary tab when opened. Here you can gain a quick overview of the family members and can easily plan and manage your title appointments from each character's perspective. Previously, the only way was to first select a title and then scroll down to your preferred candidate. So again, getting rid of unneeded steps, you can now much more easily find a house, find people in that house, and give them appointments from that same UI. Fantastic to see updates like this. And then in the last screenshot they're going to show, this is a very similar thing again. You're in your house UI, you can see all the themes within your region, and then you can see when you click on them, if you have anyone in your house that would be eligible. So really making the management of your realm and getting family members into different areas that little bit easier. You could just click on here, see who's available, and then try and influence them. Try promote them into that role if you can do. Again, just making admin that little bit less irritating to kind of navigate around all these menus. They've obviously had a lot of feedback around that. That is feedback I've had. It's very fiddly with all these menus, digging around. Okay, I just want to do this one thing. I've got to dig into like 3 menus to do it. They are trying to combine them or giving you these shortcuts to be able to do it. And with that, guys, that is the end of the dev diary for this week. A little bit longer than usual because they were covering all these different areas. Let me know what you think about all of these. I really love that bartering system. It's going to be cool to see how that plays out. It also makes Southeast Asia even more interesting to play compared to the other 2 kind of like major regions in that DLC that are getting content. I think I might start my first campaign in that area. It just sounds really cool. Going around bartering, using piety, becoming a god king, and then seeing what you can get up to as well. Let me know what you think about all these systems. Any of them you don't like, any of them that you do like, any other changes you would make to any of them. But with that, that is the end, as I said, of the dev diary. As I said right at the beginning of this video, on Thursday, they're going to be back giving us more information about the Coronations DLC, which they do say is out soon. So maybe next week, I guess we might find out on Thursday. And then next week, more information around All Under Heaven. And we'll find out more about that, obviously, next week. But anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. I cover all the news around Crusader Kings 3. I also live stream every Tuesday and Thursday, doing achievement campaigns and mod spotlights and all that kind of stuff, if you do enjoy that kind of thing. And I'm also covering EU5 in a very similar manner, covering all their dev diaries before the official announcement of the release date. And then obviously once the game comes out as well. So if you're interested in that game, or Crusader Kings, or any other grand strategy historical game, do subscribe to the channel, and there'll be plenty of content coming in the future. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.